That fatigue might not be from aging. After 50, the thyroid starts slowing down, and iodine is what keeps it running normally, regulating metabolism, producing energy, maintaining body temperature. Iodine intake has dropped by roughly half since the 1970s, and the main source was supposed to come from the simplest thing in your kitchen, the salt you sprinkle on dinner every night. But the box on your counter right now might not carry a single milligram of iodine, and the reason comes down entirely to which salt you chose. 5 years ago, I switched from the blue box to a pink jar labeled 84 trace minerals and thought I was upgrading. 84 sounds like a lot, as if every grain contained everything your body needs. Until I did the math, iodine isn't among those 84, and the rest are present in amounts so small the body can't use them in any meaningful way.
The most expensive jar of salt I found on the shelf costs over $1 an ounce. The salt inside leaves the mine in Pakistan at 3 cents. The Spice Lab sells pink salt in jars labeled hand-harvested and artisanal. Pricing language, not quality language. The entire price gap between 3 cents and over $1 lives on the label, not in the grain. The 84+ trace minerals promise is the most common reason someone picks pink salt, and it collapses under arithmetic. Iron content sits around 0.0004%. To get 10% of daily iron from this salt alone, sodium intake would blow past safe limits many times over. Potassium, magnesium, calcium, same story. In every gram of pink salt, 950 to 980 milligrams is pure sodium chloride, and 84 minerals share the remaining 20 to 50, each at a fraction so small you'd need dozens of grams of salt a day to hit the minimum for any one on the list. I tried a simple test, placed a pinch of the Spice Lab on a wet white plate. The pink faded within seconds and nearly vanished. Iron oxide at 0.0004% tints a dry crystal, but the moment it touches water, the color dissolves. In a cooking pot, the pink disappears before the salt finishes dissolving, and the minerals vanish with it. I call this the wash test. If the color doesn't survive a plate of water, it won't survive your soup pot. I checked the ingredient list for potassium iodate or potassium iodide. Not there. Pink salt contains no iodine. The Spice Lab cooks perfectly fine. Sodium chloride is sodium chloride. If you like the pink on your dinner table, that's an aesthetic choice with merit. The gap is between the number 84 on the label and what actually reaches your body. The most popular jar of pink salt on shelves is also the cheapest, and that reveals the clearest answer about what you're actually buying. Badia Spices is a Cuban-American family company in Miami. They don't mine salt, don't own mines, don't run production lines. What they run is a repackaging operation. Salt leaves the Kevra mine as raw rock and goes through 3 steps: crushing, sieving, jarring. No filtering, no refining. Because the manufacturing process for pink salt is that there is no manufacturing process. Rock leaves the mine at 3 cents an ounce. Rock goes into a jar at 40 cents to $1. That gap is shipping, branding, and story. I asked someone in my household to grab a pinch of Badia and a pinch of pink salt costing 3 times more, then hand both to me blind. I couldn't tell the difference. Same saltiness, same dissolve, same faint mineral note that any mined salt carries. If the tongue can't distinguish a $3 jar from a $10 jar, the question of what you're paying extra for answers itself. Anyone using pink salt, any brand, as a complete replacement for iodized salt over 5 years has skipped thousands of iodine doses the thyroid was supposed to receive, 1 meal at a time, none significant alone. But the thyroid keeps a running total, and the number after 5 years matters.
When a brand you've trusted your whole life puts a name on the label, you don't question whether it's accurate. You default to trusting it because the source is credible. McCormick has been on spice shelves since 1889, over 135 years of trust. When McCormick labels something Himalayan pink salt, the word Himalayan carries that entire history. The Khaira mine sits in the salt range of Punjab, Pakistan, roughly 300 kilometers south of the Himalayas, a different mountain system entirely. Himalayan isn't a protected geographical designation, it's a branding decision anyone can use. The name evokes snow-capped peaks and pristine air. The reality is an industrial salt mine in the Punjab plains. And precisely because McCormick is trustworthy, the word Himalayan on their label is more convincing than on any small brand. And precisely because it's more convincing, the question about the name becomes more important, not less.
I opened the McCormick jar and smelled it, then table salt, then kosher. All three, no scent. Salt has no terroir, no mountain aroma, no ocean aroma, no 84 minerals aroma. At concentrations below 0.01%, no mineral produces a signal the human nose can detect. If anyone says pink salt smells better, that's the label talking, not the salt.
I bought my last bag of sea salt because the label said all natural, nothing added. Both technically true. What the label doesn't say is what the ocean put inside before the salt was harvested. Celtic sea salt is harvested from tidal ponds along the coast of Brittany, France, solar evaporation dating back centuries. Seawater flows into shallow ponds, sun and wind evaporate the water, salt crystallizes and is raked by hand. No filtering, no refining. Whatever is in the seawater stays in the salt. The paradox appears when you line them up. Sea salt has direct contact with the modern ocean, the same ocean receiving everything rivers, coastlines, and shipping lanes dump into it. Mine salt has been sealed underground for hundreds of millions of years. Table salt evaporates in a closed system that never touches surface water. The one labeled natural carries the most modern fingerprints, while the one called processed has never touched today's ocean.
I grabbed a pinch of Celtic sea salt and squeezed it in my palm for 10 seconds. When I opened my hand, the salt had clumped into a damp mass, like wet sand. Table salt slid right out, dry and loose. Mine salt, same. The moisture Celtic retains is seawater that hasn't fully evaporated. Natural means the ocean stays in every grain, along with everything the modern ocean carries. 4 boxes of salt, not one contains iodine. Each promises something the 3-cent blue box doesn't have, and none contains the one thing the 3-cent blue box has always had. Pure sodium chloride, but only one carries iodine, and that difference wasn't decided by the manufacturer or by policy. Millions of households decided it themselves, one grocery trip at a time, when they swapped the blue box for something that seemed more premium. The 1924 iodization program was never repealed. No company lobbied to remove iodine. The system was simply bypassed, and nobody named the substitution because it happened too slowly to notice. Is there a salt on the shelf that actually improves the way you cook? Or does every upgrade trade away something you didn't know you were losing? I brought 4 bowls of warm water to the kitchen counter, and what happened in 60 seconds answered that so clearly I wished I'd run this experiment years ago. 4 bowls of warm water, 1 gram of a different salt in each, 60 seconds. Table salt, tiny dense cubes, dissolved almost instantly. Fine ground pink salt did the same. Grinding had destroyed the crystal structure, and the pink dissolved without a trace. Morton Kosher, flat rolled grains, took 15 to 20 seconds. But Maldon, thin, hollow flakes light as paper, resisted the water longest. They released saltiness slowly, producing a concentrated burst on the tongue that no dense or ground grain can replicate. I sat watching the 4 bowls and realized what I should have seen sooner. Every salt that dissolves completely during cooking becomes the same thing, sodium chloride ions in solution. Crystal structure, the exact thing premium salt charges extra for, is destroyed the moment it hits hot liquid. If the crystal vanishes in the pot, you're paying for something that ceased to exist when you used it. If the crystal stays intact on a steak's surface, you're paying for a sensory experience only that shape delivers.
Maldon is harvested in Maldon, Essex, England, a coastal town producing salt since Roman times. Seawater is pumped into stainless steel tanks and heated slowly in a controlled factory process. As the solution concentrates, crystals form on the surface, and workers rake them by hand before they sink. That time window between when a crystal is large enough and when it's too heavy to float creates the thin, flat, hollow shape no machine can replicate. Maldon's price reflects that window, not a story on the label. Maldon contains no iodine, but it doesn't pretend to be an everyday cooking salt. This is a finishing salt, sprinkled on completed dishes where crystals survive to the plate and dissolve slowly on your tongue. In that role, every cent is earned. The real downside, Maldon has no purpose in a pot. Using it to boil pasta or make soup is paying for crystal geometry, then destroying it with heat.
The thinnest, lightest layer of salt, appearing for just a few hours on the pond surface. If the wind shifts or temperature drops, it sinks and becomes ordinary gray salt. Fleur de Sel isn't manufactured, it's waited for. Salt flour, the literal meaning of Fleur de Sel, forms on pond surfaces when conditions are perfect. Strong sun, light wind, low humidity. Harvesters skimmed the crystal layer with shallow wooden tools without disturbing the mud below, and each pond yields only a few kilograms per day, compared to hundreds of kilograms of gray salt from the bottom. That ratio is why Fleur de Sel costs 5 to 10 times more than regular sea salt. The price reflects how much salt one person's hands can harvest from one pond on one good sunny day. I pressed a flake of Fleur de Sel between my thumb and forefinger. It didn't crumble into powder like mine salt. It split into thin, translucent layers, like pressing a dried leaf. That multi-layered structure produces an effect no other salt has. Placed on fish or grilled vegetables, each layer dissolves at a different moment, releasing salt in waves across the tongue instead of a single hit. Maldon delivers one concentrated burst. Fleur de Sel delivers a sustained sequence. Same principle. The value lives in crystal shape, and shape only matters when it survives to the plate. If every premium salt from the beginning of this video has been a story about markup or naming, the next one is the exception. This is the only part where I'll say it straight. The cooking advantage of kosher salt is real, and the reason is physics, not marketing. Morton Kosher is made by rolling compression, table salt pressed through rollers into flat, thin grains with uneven surfaces. Flat grains dissolve slower than cubes, adhere to food surfaces better, and are easier to control by hand because each pinch picks up a consistent amount. Every professional chef and recipe blog that specifies kosher salt recommends it for the same reason. Grain shape makes seasoning more precise and easier to correct. I measured a teaspoon of Morton Kosher, then filled the same spoon with regular table salt. The kosher spoon was noticeably lighter, around 480 milligrams of sodium versus 590.
Same spoon, sodium drops by nearly a fifth, not because the chemistry is different, but because flat grains stack loosely and leave air gaps. That's physics, not a label. But when I flipped the box over, the paradox runs deeper than any before. The salt that genuinely improves how millions of families cook is the same salt quietly pulling iodine from their meals for years. A family that switched entirely to kosher salt a decade ago without supplementing iodine elsewhere has been running below what the thyroid needs. Not suddenly dangerous, not dramatic, but consistently lower than what the thyroid requires to function fully. Morton Kosher is still the best hand seasoning tool on the shelf. Flat grains adhere to meat more evenly, dissolve just slow enough to taste and adjust before they disappear.
Every recipe that says 1 teaspoon of salt assumes something nobody checks: how much sodium is actually in that spoon. With Diamond Crystal, the answer is significantly lower than any other salt, and the reason lives inside the grain. Diamond Crystal is made using the Alberger process, brine heated in shallow tanks. As water evaporates, crystals form on the surface as hollow pyramids, thin-walled, empty inside. Crystals are scooped before they sink, preserving the void. A diamond crystal grain looks like salt, but is mostly air, and that changes every measurement. I held a grain near my ear and squeezed. A soft, hollow pop, completely different from the dense crunch of table salt or the click of kosher. That pop is the pyramid collapsing, confirming what the kitchen scale shows. Each teaspoon of diamond crystal contains roughly 280 milligrams of sodium versus 590 for table salt. Same spoon, sodium drops by more than half because hollow crystals occupy more volume per milligram. Diamond Crystal became the default salt of professional chefs and serious home cooks for the same reason: maximum control. Each pinch dissolves evenly, adheres well, and is hard to over-season because each pinch contains less sodium. Diamond Crystal, no iodine. The real downside, Diamond Crystal is increasingly hard to find. Cargill has faced supply issues for years, and in many areas, shelves sit empty. If you find it, buy 2. Next time, it might be gone. 100 years ago, the problem was visible to the naked eye. Across the American Midwest, in what doctors called the goiter belt, swollen necks were so common they appeared in class photos. In 1924, Dr. David Marine convinced salt manufacturers to add potassium iodate to table salt. Morton Iodized is made by vacuum evaporation. Brine from deep wells is pumped up, filtered, and evaporated in a sealed low-pressure system. The crystals are small, dense, uniform cubes, and before packaging, potassium iodate is added along with dextrose to stabilize iodine over time. 3 ingredients: salt, dextrose, potassium iodate, 3 cents an ounce. I placed a few grains of Morton Iodized on my tongue. Small cubes, quick and even. Steady saltiness that arrived and departed within seconds. Not crunchy like Maldon, not wavy like Fleur de Sel, not clingy like kosher. And I couldn't detect any sign of iodine. no taste, no smell, no sensation. Potassium iodate was there, doing exactly what it was designed to do, completely undetectable. That's the genius of the 1924 solution, an invisible delivery system inside a product everyone uses daily. Ingredient list: salt, dextrose, potassium iodate. For the first time across 9 boxes of salt, the answer is yes. The real downside, any chef will confirm, small dense cubes are hard to pinch by hand, dissolve too fast to control when seasoning directly, and dextrose, while creating no sweetness at 0.04%, means the ingredient list isn't just salt. Morton Iodized isn't the best cooking salt on the shelf, it never claimed to be. It's the only salt still keeping the same promise the first box in 1924 kept, and the price is still 3 cents an ounce.
If salt dissolves in the pot, crystal structure no longer matters. You're paying for something that ceases to exist when you use it. This rule holds for any ingredient whose structure is destroyed by heat: sugar in dough, butter in sauce, spices in a stew. The premium is only real when structure survives to the plate. If the label doesn't list iodine, iodine has to come from somewhere else: vitamin D in milk, B12 in plant milk, folic acid in flour. Each supplement is attached to a specific product, and swapping that product without finding a replacement quietly opens a gap that can take years to notice. I didn't go back to table salt entirely, I added it. 2 boxes on the kitchen counter: Diamond Crystal for cooking, Morton Iodized for anywhere salt dissolves completely. The second box costs 90 cents.
When did you switch your salt? Not which brand. Do you remember the moment you stopped reaching for the blue box? Or did it happen gradually across grocery trips you didn't notice? And if you remember, did you think about what that box was keeping for you? Every shelf in the supermarket has a story where a small change quietly altered something you didn't know you were receiving: a vitamin, a mineral, or something the old product had been holding. I'm finding them, one shelf at a time. That fatigue might not be from aging,